Peace and welcome back to the Processor Guy. Today I got something special for you. Today is a tribute to the 80s guitar that I grew up listening to. I learned how to play basically guitar in the 80s, and these are the bands that when you first start playing, these are the ones that influence you the most, right? The glam rock, I call it hair metal. The patch that you see up there is my approximation of what 80s guitar was really all about. It was about extreme distortion. You scoop the mids just a tiny bit. You'll notice on my EQ, I'm using the EQ from the amp. I'm not using the EQ section, the block. What I'm using is the EQ from the amp, and what I've done is I've scooped the mids down a little bit. I've pulled up the highs, and I pulled up the lows, and I scooped the mids to about halfway. And on the distortion pedal itself, it's got a little bit more high end than it does mid. Excuse me. It's got a touch more high end than it does mid. That was sort of the signature sound. Extreme distortion with gently scooped mids, okay? Not gone completely like the speed metal stuff that came later in the 80s, but gently scooped to accentuate the highs and the lows a little bit better. And here's a good example of that. Wait a minute, let me turn the detune off. I had the detune on, I was just kind of playing around with it, but here's the basic sound of the patch right here. You'll notice I'm using the turbo distortion with quite a bit of gain on it. I'm using the clean amp sim, which is kind of my bass. I generally always go there. I'm using an analog delay to sort of simulate that 80s sound. The early 80s, early to mid 80s didn't have a lot of digital stuff yet. There were delay units out there and there were chorus units and stuff, but they weren't truly digital they were, but they weren't really, really good. So I'm using an analog delay and I'm using spring reverb. I'm not crazy about the reverb section. We've talked about that. The reverb block in the ME80 is a little weak, but in this instance, it works. It gives me that spring reverb that was so common in the 80s. That's pretty good, right? Oh, see, that's that 80s sound of intense distortion, but still not so high that it's going to feed back at any moment, right? It was a little bit more controlled, and the turbo distortion really makes that makes it stand out. sound, and my formative years of learning to play and understanding effects and what sounds were good and what sounds weren't, it was all done during the 80s, and those bands, I just absolutely loved them. You can this is almost good enough for, I would say, Randy Rhoads. Randy's sound was so unique because he double tracked everything. He double tracked all his rhythm parts, he double tracked all his solos, and they were note for note perfect every single time. And so he had a really, really unique sound. Although this patch will get you there if you want it. Right? You can hear it. You may want to, you can, set the EQ to your own personal choice. This is just the basic 80s tone, right? Now, if you're going to use this for rhythm, it's perfect as it is. If you're going to use it for a solo or for a lead from that time period, you're going to need to boost a little bit on the high end, or at least just bring the level up just slightly above your rhythm part, and that'll get it for you. Now, we'll turn the harmonist on, and I've got it set to detune. If you notice, the harmony is set to 0 right here. You see the cursor. The harmony is set to 0, and what that does is detunes it ever so slightly, okay? And then gives you a mix of the delayed signal, the detuned signal, and the original signal. And I'm going to turn the level down to about 70, and we'll turn it back on. And you can hear when you do this, here's without the harmonist. Now we'll turn the harmonist on, and you'll hear it's going to add a little bit of high end. Not sure why. It's going to add a little bit of high end, but it's going to bring the sound. It's going to spread the sound out a little bit. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I will pull the harmonist back out. I don't use. I've talked about the reverb section in the ME80. It's a little weak, but I decided that I would put the spring reverb in there with just a little bit. I mean, it's up to 20. Your own personal taste, may be a little different than mine. I generally don't want to hear a lot of reverb on a truly crunch rhythm part, because I want to hear the guitar, not the effects, right? I want to hear the guitar distort. And as usual, my trusty Ibanez I had when I was learning. I still don't know how I managed to afford it, but I bought an Ibanez RG550 in the 80s and fell in love with the neck. It was more guitar than I was actually ready for. You know what I mean? At that point in my life, we all do that. We buy guitars that are beyond our reach as far as technique and ability go, and the same thing with effects. But it wound up being one of my. I got so used to that neck. The neck is just beautiful. Yeah, that'll get you that big white snake sound too. It's The key to this, though, is going to be in your pickup. It doesn't need to be really super hot, but it needs to be smooth. It needs to be a humbucker, and it needs to be nice and smooth. If you don't have a humbucker pickup, you can use the sim, the single coil to humbucker sim, and that should get it for you. You might want to, if it's a Fender, you might want to bring your highs down just a little bit because Fender pickups are known for being awfully squealy. They've got a lot of high end on them. That's one of the things that I've found over the years. So I've had to, I've had to shape the patches that I create for my Fender specifically with the idea that I'm going to have way too much high end on these Fender pickups. But on this one, this Ibanez pickup, it's not great, but it's really good. I really like it. It's smooth. It doesn't always get me to the top of where I want to go, but it's smooth and it doesn't add too much gain. My Les Paul, those pickups are so hot they add a ton of gain to the tone, and sometimes they'll get out of control. But this one works really well. That's that sound right there. It's great for pick squeals as long as you understand where to get them and how to get them properly. It's great for pick squeals. It's great for rhythm stuff. It's also great for solos. It's great for, great for two-handed tapping. It's clean in the sense that if you keep your if your pickup is nice and smooth, you're going to get real great definition for for the notes, and that's where you want to be. You don't want it so overdriven that you've got a lot of like I call them transients, audible transients from when your guitar is too hot or when the patch is too hot. This patch is not too hot. It's not. You notice on the amp sim, let's look over here on the amp sim, I've got the gain down to 10. I want no gain on the amp because what I'm trying to do is to recreate, and this is what this turbo distortion is a recreation of the Proco Rat pedal. The Rat had such an aggressive sound, and you heard it on everything. Everyone used one in the 80s. It seemed like I used one in the 80s. So, but that's it right there. That's pretty much that's the patch. You'll see the patch over on the left hand of on the left of the screen. Um, like I said, you can alter the EQ to what you want. You can alter if you don't want that much distortion. You could pull that back as well too. So that's pretty much it, kids. I hope you enjoyed it. Rock on, 80s lives forever. Peace.